Well, folks, if you do this for a living, the off season's busier than the season. So here we are, NFL draft decisions. We've got, of course, National Signing Day coming up in 2 to 3 weeks, and we've got that transfer portal. And I guess a quarterback might be out there, or two, or 15, or 20. Welcome into Buckeyes Live right here at the Voice of College Football. We do this each and every week, typically on a Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and therefore we ask that you would subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for the notifications. Why? Well, it's free, number one. Number two, that lets you know when we go live. We've got Steve Hellwagon right next to me. You can catch his work at bucknuts.com, 247 Sports. Tony Gerdeman, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also, Buckeye Weekly is the podcast you want to listen to more than once a week for sure. And also, we hope Kevin Noon is doing well, just a little under the weather. So we hope Kevin's just fine. Guys, how are we doing today?
Good.
Doing great.
Good. All right, Steve, there's a quarterback out there somewhere who should be wearing scarlet and gray, we believe, at some point next season, and probably to take that first snap of the season. There are all sorts of names. It's amazing to look at the transfer portal and consider the major programs whose starting quarterbacks are basically free agents. Kansas State, Oregon State, Mississippi State, Arkansas, we could keep going. So what are you hearing? What do you think should happen? Where do you think their priorities lie?
Yeah, it's crazy. Obviously, since we last were here, Ohio State lost Kyle McCord. He decided on Monday to enter the transfer portal, and that created an opening at Ohio State. You figured he would be, at minimum, in the competition to compete for the starting job at Ohio State next year. And now that job's wide open. You got Devin Brown, redshirt freshman currently, Lincoln Keenholtz, a true freshman, and Aaron Noland, who's coming in as a 2023 signee, will sign his letter of intent here in 2 weeks from today, I guess. So are they in the market for a transfer portal quarterback? I think if they can get one of the top ones who could come in right away and put this team in contention for the Big Ten championship and another playoff berth next year, I don't think you can turn that down. If you get somebody with multiple years, obviously you're going to run the risk of losing Devin Brown. Only Ryan Day and Brian Hartline and Corey Dennis, the triumvirate, on the Ohio State coaching staff, know for sure what they have with Devin Brown or what they think they might have with Lincoln Keenholtz, who they've only seen, a little bit of at this point. So it would be hard to turn down the likes of, say, a Dillon Gabriel, a guy, coming from Oklahoma and Central Florida who threw for a bazillion yards. You've got Cam Ward from Washington State, who's kind of an intriguing possibility as well, 3,700 yards this past season, although the team was only 2-7 in the Pac-12. He only threw 7 interceptions, but he's not much of a runner. I just keep coming back to the fact that you're 0-3 against Michigan in starting quarterbacks who do not run the football. And, there are a number of things wrong right now with Ohio State football, even at 11-1. Got to fix the offensive line, got to fix the defensive line. Could use some impact players at linebacker. A lot of different things that are happening with this program, but you need better quarterback play, and I think that that's kind of what's led us to this point today.
Yeah, and I don't know that they necessarily would have gone to the portal if Kyle McCord had stayed, but him leaving, now you're in a position where you want to explore your options more fully, and from my understanding, they are exploring those options, but it's not a one-way street. It's a two-way dance, and then you're constantly being somebody's constantly cutting in, asking to dance with your date, that sort of thing, and bringing in a fatter wallet, and so it's not just a two-way communication. There's a ton of moving parts in this. As I was telling somebody earlier in the day, it's all of the sand is constantly shifting, and you're just trying to stay above it And at some point, the sand's going to stop, the musical chairs are going to stop, and either you have a quarterback in the portal or you're going to go with the guys that you've gotten, through recruiting. And we've talked before, they're very high on Lincoln Keenholz. They think he's the future. That future may be coming sooner than maybe they anticipated. And the move I think they make here, if they go and get a quarterback out of the portal, I assume it would just be a 1-year guy, 1-year rental. And I would assume that would mean you're doing that knowing that Devin Brown's going to hit the portal. Like, it's going to be a reaction from Brown would be to leave if you're bringing in somebody to start. So there's things like that to weigh, and you're not concerned about losing somebody necessarily. You just want to have the best team that you can. You want to be able to win all of the games that you should, and some maybe that you shouldn't. And you got to do what's best for the program. And if they can get an agreement, and again, this is going to be, as Matt Rule talked about, Nebraska head coach talked a week or two ago. Good quarterbacks are going to cost you about $1 million, $1.5 million. Ohio State had a good quarterback. They need a better quarterback. So do the math on that one. You're talking $2 million, $2.5 million for one of these top line quarterbacks. And that's not our money. So it's not my money. It's not your money. It's not the fans' money. Is that an investment that is wise? Does it matter? If it brings in another quarterback, who cares? It's just play money anyway, basically. So I do think obviously they're looking at the portal. I would love to see what happens with Lincoln Keenholz starting next year, just to see. I think it would give some life to the program. But once you start losing, then all of that life goes away. So I know the loss, the Kyle McCord going to the portal. I don't know if I saw a single dry eye on Twitter in terms of there's nobody necessarily upset. So there's a lot of celebrating on Twitter, and Twitter is not necessarily the best representative of the way things are going, but it does, just the mystery, I think it does rejuvenate some things. But the Cotton Bowl, my understanding is Devin Brown's going to stick through the Cotton Bowl and then see what happens after that. So you've got that. But I think they're either way, honestly, if they're probably going to go to the portal in terms of either they don't get a starter and they have 3 guys and they need to bring in a 4th, in terms of Ryan Day likes to have 4 guys. So you bring in somebody, another Tristan Gebbia type, because you can't bring in a star. If you miss on one of the top guys, you can't bring in one of the mid-tier guys to be a starter because you're not improving anything. And also you might send you might send Devin Brown into the portal because of that. So you need to bring in somebody to just be that 4th guy if you don't get that number 1.
I think there's a pretty large portion of the fan base that feels secure in bringing in a guy that has started games and proven something. And most fans are locked in on their team, so they don't know. Besides looking at a stat sheet or whatever they hear about KJ Jefferson, Cam Ward, you can fill in the blank with about 5 or so guys that would be under consideration. Dillon Gabriel, they don't. That seems like, okay, well, that guy started over there, so he's proven something. I'd rather have a proven commodity than be starting over with some first-time starting quarterback. But obviously, if a player never gets an opportunity to start for the first time, then this is what they will be doing from year to year. But then also there's the experience, most recently with Kyle McCord, to say, well, first-time starting quarterback, see what we got. However that's evaluated, which with most of the fan base means not good enough. So, yes, they can evaluate quarterbacks. That's their job. So if they know that they've got the next guy, and obviously Justin Fields had never started anywhere, Dwayne Haskins had never started anywhere, other than throwing that 3rd and 16 dime against Michigan and pulling that out of the fire, but it never started. And of course, CJ Stroud as well. So if they can truly do their jobs, then they know what they've got.
Well, and it's the time frame on all of this is pretty fascinating because you're evaluating guys in the portal, you're preparing for a bowl game, you're trying to recruit your own players, you're trying to finish up a signing day. The calendar is completely ridiculous. And there isn't enough time to do everything that you need to do. And until the calendar changes, this is going to be a mad month. And I think it's one of the busiest days on the Ohio State beat ever a few days ago, and all heck starts breaking loose and the portal opens, and it's a brand new world. I think that the thing that really is jarring to me is that Ohio State and Oklahoma lost their quarterbacks to the portal. And that's not something like the top of the line blue blood programs don't necessarily have to worry about losing their starting quarterback to the portal. Now, Kyle McCord going to the portal, like I said, I don't think it really made anybody upset. But what if that's CJ Stroud? What if that is Justin Fields as a sophomore? After an incredible year, could we see that? I think Ohio State's NIL arm would do a better job of keeping CJ Stroud or Justin Fields at home. It is surprising that Dillon Gabriel got out of Oklahoma, though.
Yeah, I made the same comment yesterday. It hit me. Okay, we've only been through this portal. The portal's existed for a long time, but in regards to this amount of players and quality of players, it's only been a couple of years. What level of quarterback, say what you will about Kyle McCord, he's coming off an 11-1 season. We've never seen a quarterback with this kind of success hit the transfer portal.
Yeah, the whole thing is completely upside down right now. And everyone believes the grass is greener on the other side. It's not. I think for most of these guys, they're going to be completely disappointed in what happens. And, there's some names out there that have won a lot of football games and thrown for a lot of touchdowns and a lot of yards. And it's a people business. I think Ryan Day and Brian Hartline, Corey Dennis, refer to them again. They need to feel comfortable that with anybody they bring in, that they're not going to come in and disrupt what they already have going. I mean, it's kind of like they've got a program that, for lack of a better term, if they just show up, they're 10-2, 11-1, and in the playoff every year going forward. And they don't want somebody to come in and knock things upside down to where you go 8-4 and everybody loses their job. That's just not what you want. So you got to be very careful with who you bring in to your program, who you bring into your locker room. And it's very difficult to make those decisions when, at the what they used to say, at the end of a bayonet. You're up against the clock. You're up against all these other things, and the gun is pointing at you. You need to make a decision today. Like the play clock is running down, and you have to make a decision on a person without ever getting to know them. And I think that is a situation that's not a tenable situation. I don't know this. We can throw our hands up in the air and say, "Oh, NIL and transfer portal, this sucks," and it does, but it's not changing. So you have to embrace the churn. And when Dwayne Haskins goes pro, you replace him with Justin Fields, and Justin Fields, whatever. CJ Stroud is there, and you got to have the next guy lined up. You got to be thinking 18 months out at every instance. And so build relationships with as many good people and players as you can, and fall back on that in these moments. And maybe there's somebody in this portal who they have a tie to that could help them take the next step in 2024. I think the roster's in a state of flux. We've touched on a little bit about how many guys are going to be leaving. Our group at Bucknuts, we put together a list of 10 guys to write stories about, to have in the can ready to go when or if they make an announcement, if they're leaving or staying. And it's like, Travion Henderson, Marvin Harrison, Denzel Burke, JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer. So in addition to the portal people who left and the seniors who are leaving, you could have 4, 5, 6, 7 underclassmen leaving as well. It's a mass exodus right now at Ohio State. So the 2024 team will have a vague resemblance of the 2023 team. And in some ways, that's a good thing, because they won't carry the baggage of losing to Michigan 3 years in a row, because hardly any of them will have ever played against Michigan in a live football game. So That's maybe the one positive thing out of this.
Well, and we can dovetail into the super chat if you want in terms of who is actually going to be at the Cotton Bowl, because this is, you've already got what, 12 guys in the portal. And thank you, Ryan Dawes, for the super chat. With those 12 guys out, and there's going to be, I don't know, 5 opt-outs or so maybe, and you've got some guys that are injured. The FCS scholarship number is 63. I would be shocked if Ohio State is around that number going to the Cotton Bowl in terms of scholarship players in that game against whatever Missouri's going to take in there. They're 85 or whatever. So they're going to be a little undermanned in that. The walk-ons are going to have a great trip, probably play some special teams and things like that. So that's why I asked Ryan Day back on Sunday, do you view this as the start of the 2024 season? And he talked about, well, we want to finish the 2023 season the right way, but it is also the start of that. It's kind of a pre-spring spring where you get to look at all of these young guys, and then you actually get to see what they can do in a game, provided you give them that opportunity. And of course, we talked to him before all of the Kyle McCord stuff came out. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting look at the Buckeyes, because at this point, I don't know that you can safely assume any of the guys that we're talking about going into the port or going to the NFL draft, as Steve talking about, like these 10 guys or whatever. At this point anymore, you can't assume those guys are going to play. So if you are a starter and you have an NFL decision, just assume that guy is not going to play in this game. And then, the guy below them moves up, basically.
Yeah. I think about 10 years ago, they played Clemson in the Orange Bowl down in Miami, and the safety play for Ohio State had been terrible all season. So they made the decision during bowl practice. They pushed Von Bell, who was a true freshman, played mostly on special teams and maybe a little bit as a backup. They pushed him into production and played him quite a bit in that game, and he ended up having an interception on the goal line against Taj Boyd and Clemson in that game. And then I don't know if he was a first-team All-American when they won the national championship the following season, but that was a guy who leapt out at you in bowl practice and in the bowl game, who the following year that ended in a 4, just like the one next year will, came on and was certainly all Big Ten player and got some All-American acclaim, I believe, but and then jumped off to the NFL after 2015. So a 3-year player for the Buckeyes. So I think that's the example. That's the film I would put up, see this guy right here, and then, juxtapose that with the fact that he's now in his 8th season in the NFL or whatever, and say, this can be you. With a good month of December, this can be you. So, that's the goal for those young guys this month, is to jump off the chart, make a winning play against Missouri, and, set yourself up for a big spring and a big year in 2024. That's what this month is, development. You don't want to lose this game, because you don't want the negative recruiting and the whispers from the Dodds and the 40s to be, Ohio State's the next Clemson, that was at the top and is now fallen completely off the side of the mountain. You don't want a South Carolina Outback Bowl 24/7 job to hit you here. You want to make a representative showing. You don't want to get knocked out of the box in this game by playing all the young guys. But at the same time, the result of this game is not anything anybody will remember 3 months from now. It's what's going on, requisite with 2024.
There's a few knuckleheads like me that remember all that and the scores from 40 years ago. But
well, hey, they lost to Clemson and won the national championship the next year, and that was a spectacular loss to Clemson too, with all the mistakes that were made, the fumble punt, and
the
whatever.
fumble punt with a 9-point lead.
Yeah,
but you're right.
And they lost 2 Outback Bowls in a row to South Carolina, and then won the national championship in 2002. So
they did.
You got that going on.
Just
saying.
And what's funny about these bowl games is they've been just discarded to the side as just rubbish. And but still they seem to be one of those tenants that fans and people in media point to when they're adding up the, did you finish ranked? How many times did you finish ranked in the top 10? What's his bowl record?
I have a question. A year from now, they go to a 12-team playoff. And let's say, just for sake of argument, well, it doesn't have to be Ohio State. Let's assume Ohio State goes 13-0, is the number 1 seed, and gets a first-round bye. And then they play their quarterfinal on or about January 1st. We know that. Okay, let's say you're anywhere from the 5 to the 12 seed, the 5, 6, 7, and 8 all get to host 9, 10, 11, and 12 on games that are going to be played on or about December 14, 15, 16, whatever that falls on next year. If you lose that game, do you then get a chance to go to the Outback Bowl or the Capital One Bowl, or has that ship sailed? Is there any reason why you'd even entertain that thought, or was that your postseason? Has anybody answered that question? Because again, those are going to become even more exhibition games than they ever were. And there is a school of thought, believe it or not, that ESPN may shift all of that ESPN events invitational investment that they do in a lot of these bowl games to preseason games last weekend in August, where maybe even you'd play a 2-team event or a 4-team event in August, where you play games one weekend, the 2 winners play the next weekend as like a season tip-off type thing or something. I mean, that's where all that there would be no other bowl games, or there'd be very few other bowl games for major conference teams, because I don't know, what does the future of the postseason even look like? Do we even know?
Well, yeah, and Mark, maybe I know that was one of the questions, was can a loser in the first round then go to a bowl game when this was all thrown out there a couple of years ago? And I don't know that I ever heard the eventual answer on that one, but it would be
I don't know why
interesting.
you'd want to.
No.
I don't know why you'd want to.
The practice reps. That would be.
But you're just coming off of a game at mid-month, and now you got 2 weeks to turn around and prepare to go play Wake Forest in the Outback Bowl. It's kind of like, do I really give a shit? I mean, it's like I don't know.
My assumption is that you'd be done, because the bowls want to sell those tickets to the fans. That the fan bases have to know that they're going to that bowl.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume you would be done and you would be out. And yeah,
that's not a bad thing, though. Yeah.
No. And the other thing is, you can also, if they want to change some rules about practice, you could allow the playoff teams to continue practicing as long as all the other playoff teams. Like, if that's something, then you could just focus on the young guys. Once you've been eliminated, then it just becomes practice for the freshmen and the sophomores and things like that. If that's something that would be a sticking point that they would want, or a benefit that they could use.
That doesn't make any sense either, though, because school is out of session and you'd have to house all those people and
house them anyway
over the holidays.
I mean, they don't move from their dorms. I mean, you see the apartments that they live in.
Yeah. I don't know. That you'd be making people work over the holidays for meaningless practice. I think once it's done, it's done.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it wouldn't be. And also, this is also interrupting recruiting in the last couple of weeks of the early signing day. So I'm sure coaches would love to be done with the season once they're done with the season.
Absolutely. I don't know if this point is lost at this point. I was going to go back to the transfer portal quarterback situation, because again, if you're a fan and lover of college football nationally, and you're aware of these guys, you've seen them play, that sort of thing, there is a level of intrigue to plug in somebody else's starting quarterback and say, what would he be at Ohio State? But certainly we do enough Oklahoma content here and hear from the fan base, and also from people that know that, Dillon Gabriel, I'll put him in a category to a certain extent with Kyle McCord in this way, that after the Kyler Murrays and the Baker Mayfields of the world, people weren't that enamored at Oklahoma about Dillon Gabriel and his performance, and that he's not an Oklahoma quarterback. He needs to get out of here. He's not up to our standard.
That's pretty interesting that he gets chased away then. I mean, would you know more than I, do you feel like he was chased away, or is this, wasn't the love wasn't there, or Oklahoma didn't do enough to keep him?
No, I think that was more of a fan base mentality of these are our standards. And no, I think Brent Venables was recognized his value and was pleased with, he's a good quarterback. He's a top 10 or 15 quarterback.
Well, and of these, like 10, 15 quarterbacks in the port of the top 10 or 15, I think most of them could lead Ohio State to an 11-1 season. But I think we know that 11-1 isn't good enough. And so, who is that guy in there that beats Michigan? Who is that guy in there that doesn't lose to Iowa or Purdue or something like that? And I think Ohio State, having the game at home next year and not knowing what's going to happen with Michigan, but I'm always going to favor the home team, a season in advance. So Ohio State should win that one next year. But is there, who out there is a sure thing to make this a 12-0 team? And again, it may be 11-1. Oregon, who knows what's going on out there? Like, you can't predict an undefeated season, but is there somebody out there that's going to do better than Kyle McCord, or is it just going to be different versions of the same kind of thing? And you don't know, especially when you don't have much. You have limited contact with the players. You got to do a lot of vetting. I'm sure Ryan Day has talked to Chip Kelly about Dante Moore. Not that they would bring him in because he's got 3 years of eligibility, and if you bring him in, you can just say goodbye to everybody else. And so they won't do that. And Riley Leonard is almost signed, sealed, and delivered to Notre Dame, so don't expect that. But there are some other guys out there, and Cam Ward being the guy at the top of the list that people are talking about has seen it all, done it all at very different places. And Incarnate Word and at Washington State was like an option quarterback in high school in a wing T offense or something, and blew everybody away as a true freshman in the FCS, throwing for almost 400 yards a game in a half season in 2020. So, like, he's got ability, but is he a sure upgrade, or is it just a different upgrade?
Yeah.
Do you give up the sunroof for the heated seats?
Yeah, Cam Ward is a bit of a mystery to me because, like Steve said, 2-7 in the Pac-12 and playing for them for 2 years. I've seen him play a little bit, but it wasn't like I was focused on, I got to evaluate Cam Ward and how good he is. I saw him throw a couple series and then I'm off to another game. It's not like I'm sitting down to watch Washington State. It's just, they're not a priority. So he's a bit of a mystery to me and just kind of a stat sheet. And I've seen a throw here and a throw there. And then DJ Uiagalelei being brought up. Why in the world they would touch him, I have no idea. I've come to that guy's defense because I think that the Clemson wide receiver play for him wasn't anything close to what it was for a decade. Offensive line issues and all of that. So he wasn't set up for Clemson-like success, but still, he's not. From what I've seen, Kyle McCord can put a football in a spot more consistently than DJ Uiagalelei can.
Yeah, going back on McCord, I tried to come to his defense, and people quickly reminded me that, he was somewhat inconsistent, and, there'd be parts of games where, like the first quarter, he was miserably awful. And then the second and third quarter, he'd make all these NFL throws, and you're like, well, that's great. And they'd be so great that he wouldn't even need to play the fourth quarter. It's like it was weird. It was a weird dynamic. He locked on to Marvin Harrison. People like Zach Smith produced screenshots of these open receivers, in the Michigan game that he's missing to go to his security blanket, Marvin Harrison Jr. So I see all of his faults in all of his all of his pluses and all of his minuses. And I just come back to the fact they played behind the worst offensive line Ohio State's had maybe back to 1999. And I mean, that's like over 20 years that they've had, credible offensive line play that, they didn't have it this year. The left guard, who's of this impression he's going to the NFL, turned Michigan's best rusher loose on the last play of the season and got him crushed. And, and it's McCord's fault because he threw a pick when he was being hit. He was under constant duress the entire game. So, he's not, I think next year he'll actually be a pretty good player, but wherever he goes has got to break him of that mental block that he needs to lock in on whoever the number one receiver is and check down to other options and look for other people and, all these other things that, like Tressel used to say, everything is part of everything. We sit here and we make these discussions about football from 5 miles up in the air. And it's like, yeah, but there's no all one size fits all answer to any of this. It's just, you hope the combination of guys that you put together on the field for that 3-hour game are good enough to beat the combination of guys the other team puts on the field to win that game. At Notre Dame, they were. At Wisconsin, they were. Against Penn State, they were. At Michigan, they weren't. And in my mind, we spend a lot of time talking about the quarterback, but when the offensive line and the defensive line play is not what it needs to be to win a national championship, lo and behold, you're not going to win a national championship. So till they get those two areas fixed, we can debate the quarterback could be Roger Staubach or, Craig Krenzel or whoever. It could be whoever. It's immaterial.
Great stuff out of these two each and every week. We got Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts 247 Sports. Steve, we figure you're doing your typical thing this week.
Yes. Basketball tonight against Miami of Ohio. Ohio State has won 6 games in a row, moved into the coaches poll at number 25. And I'm tracking every one of their developments. And they're at Penn State on Saturday for another Big Ten game. They actually have a string of games here. They play. They have exams next week, as does the football team, to bring people up to date. The football team sounds like it will practice a couple times this weekend. The guys are in what they call the reading week now, where you cram for exams. And then next week are the actual exams, like Monday through Wednesday, Thursday. And then like Wednesday or Thursday, they will start in with the bowl practice. Maybe Saturday or Sunday we'll start to get an indication of who is not practicing and who is not planning to play. Haven't heard really many of those announcements yet. We've heard, the portal guys are obviously gone and not going to play. So we'll see what direction that goes. But they'll practice in Columbus for probably 10, 12 days, go home for a few days, and then on the 23rd is when the team will report to Dallas and begin the final preparations for the game on the 29th. As far as basketball, they'll be off next week with the exams as well. Then on the road to Atlanta to play UCLA, back home to play like New Orleans, play with West Virginia in a game in Cleveland on like December 30 or something like that. I'm actually flying from Texas to Cleveland to go to that game on the 30th. And they could roll into Indiana on January the 6th with all these winnable games in this stretch at 13-1. So I can't predict that's what's going to happen, but it is definitely a possibility with the way that they're playing. So that was my public service announcement for anybody who gives a crap about Ohio State basketball.
Tony,
or the student's schedule for the next 3 weeks.
Tony, what's going on this week?
I'll be putting something up from Ryan Day today after we talked to him on Sunday about, viewing this as the start of next season, the end of this season, something like that. We'll be doing a podcast, probably talking about the quarterback situation, and I'll write my weekly, what I know, what I think, what I wonder on the message board for Thursday or Friday, and that's we'll talk to Marvin Harrison tomorrow, possibly on campus, and we will get him to tell us whether or not he is entering the NFL draft, staying. Don't expect that. And there were some dumb rumors that he was transferring, and don't expect that. So we'll see if he's ready to let us know that, one, he is turning pro. Two, he will not be playing in the bowl game, which those are the two things I'm expecting.
If he goes in the portal, I know where he's going. He's going to the Chicago Bears or the Carolina Panthers. That's where he's going in the portal.
There would have
Bring
been
him
a
home,
day and an
Chicago.
age not too long ago that we would have been talking about the bowl game, especially since I can't even remember. They're in the Cotton Bowl, right?
Yes,
I can't remember
AT&T
which New
Stadium,
Year's
Arlington, Texas. They're playing at 8 o'clock on Friday, December the 29th.
Yes.
So
That would be the most important thing in the world. That would have been the first thing we would have been talking about, and then about 10 minutes later, we would have been talking about Marvin Harrison going to New York as a Heisman.
well,
finalist.
he can't win it. I know he's got one first place vote, though. I can't tell you where it came from because there's all these arcane rules by the Heisman Trophy Trust. But I can assure you that when his vote totals come up on the screen, there will be at least one first place vote that was put in I have that on very good authority that at least one voter in this process gave him a first place vote. So
I was surprised that he was named a finalist because he's not going to win it. It's going to be one of the three quarterbacks, but we have seen him go with three before. I guess makes a better show because you don't have to make the packages as long, and you've got more interviews, and you can maybe get in extra commercials that way. But
get some Ohio State fans to watch.
Well, and you give us also you give Desmond Howard an opportunity to rip on Ohio State's
insult
offensive line
him.
more
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Desmond Howard can insult him. What a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
This guy they fire Pollock, who is a professional. They fire so many professional broadcasters, and they keep this bleeping clown on the air who questioned Pete Thamel, who is the single most respected journalist in the sport, on the air live. Why don't you come out here and be threatened person to person by the Michigan people, you whatever you are? Then he goes on and says that, this stuff about Feinbaum. How do they allow him to continue to keep a job there? It's like he's Teflon. He can say and he can do the most nonsensical crap over and over and over and over, and nobody stops him. They deserve every bit of everything they get. If that's the pony you're going to back, piss on you. That's my feeling with them.
Well said, Steve. And he's not even good at his regular everyday job in terms of analyzing the sport, even beyond the controversial stuff, just doing the day-to-day.
He's an awful person. He's just an awful person. The HBO, why is he on ESPN? 15 years ago, they did the HBO documentary, and he's quoted in the first minute of the thing, bleep Ohio State. And this is somebody you have on ESPN that's owned by Walt Disney Corporation. In the first minute of the show on HBO, he is like bleep Ohio State. And this guy has a job on the Walt Disney Company platform and has for years and probably will for years to come. There's not enough bad things I can say about him. That's just such low class. And I can't even – what he did to C.J. Stroud should have got him fired on the spot. That's just ridiculous.
Again, well said. We can carve out some more time for you, Steve.
Would you edit all that and please put that on the line? I want to put that out there that's my feeling about him. That's my feeling. That has nothing to do with the fact that the Heisman Trophy pose and all. Great player. His teams were so much better than Ohio State. They were playing a different sport. When he played at Michigan, They were at the top of the sport. Ohio State was just lucky to field a team. Congrats to him. But what he's done and said in recent years, no, not acceptable. And for ESPN to abet it and allow it is even worse.
What probably kept his job was that remarkable selection of Pitt, Baylor, and Texas A&M to reach the college football playoff. That was
Good
an
heavens.
exceptional projection on his part.
Hey, I wanted to look up Missouri real quick if I can find what league are they in. I'm looking under Big 12. You know what's funny? Ohio State has had so many problems with SEC teams in the bowl. They did beat Arkansas and they did beat Alabama that one time, we know. And they've had such trouble. Lose to Georgia all these different times. Lost to LSU in the national championship. Lost to Florida in the national championship. Okay, I'm going to stop.
That's the kryptonite, Steve.
Now, they beat Arkansas that one time, and all the SEC old liners, that's not SEC. Arkansas, that's not SEC. They've only been in the league like 7 years. That's not SEC.
Yeah,
no.
Well, it's actually about 20 at that time.
I don't think, at that time in 2011, hadn't they only come over?
They joined in
it had been 20 years. Yeah, it had been from the 90s and the 2000s.
Now,
Missouri, there's no way they're going to count Missouri. There's no way the Georgia and Alabama fans are going to give Ohio State credit if they beat Missouri. No way. That doesn't count.
When Missouri and Texas A&M joined the SEC, Ohio State's record against the SEC got a lot better immediately. Those games
absolutely
count. Big Ten versus SEC, they definitely count. If you can take the Arkansas game away because it's vacated or whatever, you can include the Corby Jones games, the Cotton Bowl in '87, all of those games. That's Ohio State owning the SEC right there for sure.
Yeah. 99 Sugar. Yep.
Was talking with somebody else on the beat about covering this game in terms of our schedule for the bowl game. Not to get too deep into the woods, but we go and we watch practice for like 15 minutes, then we do nothing, and then we get to talk to Ohio State players for like 45 minutes. And then after that, you get to watch. Well, we don't get to watch any practice in Missouri because that's during our interview time. And then, like 2 hours after that, we can talk to Missouri players. I don't know if I plan on talking to any Missouri players this week or this month because the Cotton Bowl is the side story in Ohio because this is moving on to the 2024 season. This is not the way Ohio State wanted to end their season, so this becomes moving on into 2024 next season. What's happening right now that will change what's happening in the future, and there's much more interest there, I think, from the fans than, hey, what did the Missouri linebackers say about Dallin Hayden?
Yeah, kind of crazy.
Not going to talk to Cody Schrader.
Perhaps. I'm also annoyed that all of this, again, way into the weeds. I'm annoyed that generally at these bowl games, the stuff happens, the interviews happen at the hotel, so we don't have to leave anywhere. Our hotel is like 17 miles away from AT&T Stadium where all of the interviews are happening, so we have to schlep back and forth for these things, which is kind of annoying. I'm just, but it is still. That's just media complaining, which we do a lot.
Eli Drinkwitz is a funny dude. Now you'll get something out of him. Now I have heard this and seen this directly just the other day, but I hear it happens all the time that every opportunity he gets to mention the Michigan cheating, he brings it up.
Well, we saw it a couple of days ago. He did it a couple of weeks ago as well. Yeah, he's into that. He likes doing that, which I don't think is going to bother Ohio State fans at all.
No, I would guess.
Looking at Missouri, I see they lost to LSU in a shootout at home, 49-39. And I do recall following their game against Georgia, they gave them a heck of a game. It was 30-21 was the final score. And they were, tied 10-10 at halftime. So they gave Georgia a really tough game. What are their best wins? Tennessee 36-7. Kentucky 38-21 on the road. Wow, they whipped Kentucky.
Kansas State
at home 30-27. Those
on
are
a 61-yard field goal at the gun.
Oh my gosh! Hey, don't give them that opportunity. You might want to go for it on fourth down and not let them have that opportunity.
Yeah, it's a good little football team. They've done well this season.
Yep.
No question about that. We've got
That's
a
a great
couple.
year for them. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's Eli Drinkwitz was sitting below 500. He had a worse record that Barry Odom had and more time going into this season, and they let Barry Odom go. So I didn't know where he stood going into this year. He was about 2 games under 500, but he pulls this 10-win season out. So and a couple nice recruiting classes.
I'm just looking at the line history in this one. Ohio State opened as a 6.5-point favorite, and then somewhere around, it's dropped considerably every day, and now it's Ohio State as a 1.5-point underdog to Missouri. Obviously, the Kyle McCord news being the big sea change there, but that's quite a bit of movement. And setting lines on bowl games when you don't know who's going to be playing is crazy anyway, but that they have to. You can't take Missouri lightly because they will put points on you. Who knows how much of Ohio State's defense is going to be playing. You might see a couple of freshman cornerbacks out there. Who knows what you're going to be in a freshman safety. So this is going to be a stiff test, and it's going to be something you'll see some makeup from these guys in terms of the Ohio State Buckeyes, what they have, the kind of fight that they have. Will they have that kind of fight? Because it's not going to be easy. They're going to be. This is Steve. I don't know if you're on the any of the Zooms with Day and Eli Drinkwitz. The change, the demeanor between Day and being part of the Cotton Bowl compared to like Eli Drinkwitz, like they were ecstatic with the Cotton Bowl. They can't wait to face Ohio State. When you've got that facing, we just want to end the season the right way. We lost to Michigan. Things didn't go well. These 2 different moods, 2 different attitudes, and you've got to spend these couple of weeks changing that attitude for Ohio State and convincing players that this is still important. You should still want to do this. But also you're talking to some very hungry young players like, hey, if you want to get going, this is your this is your major audition. And that's something that they need to take seriously. But Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz, Cotton Bowl, Ohio State, like they are all in on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't studied Missouri and the CBS. Well, I use the CBS Sports Draft Ranking since I work for CBS and 24/7 Sports. I don't know if they have any first, second, third round guys who they themselves may do this opt out as well. So, are they such a program that even their first round guys would say, oh no, I owe everything to this program. I am definitely playing in this one last game with my brothers. There are still some people out there who subscribe to that theory. It is a rarity in this day and age that some first round guys will play in the exhibition bowl games, but as that's what, I suppose we can start referring to anything other than playoff games. But, I think that'll be interesting to see if the Tigers are missing anybody. Great for them. Ohio State is rarely in this position where they're playing a non-entity in a bowl game, and it is a departure. It's a difference for sure, and you have to counter their energy. I think one of the things that people came away from the Michigan game with was the fact that Ohio State's sideline really didn't have much energy. And you watch some of those championship games over the weekend, and you saw people just losing their mind, on the sideline of some of these games, trying to pull out every stop to win a championship. And Ohio State just looked like it was another day at the office, and it was the rivalry game. So, again, was it you, Tony, or somebody quoted the number of Ohio guys on the roster? Like when Tressel won the national championship, there were like 84 Ohio guys, and 12 or 13 of the starters were from Ohio. When Meyer won it, there were like 68, 69 Ohio guys, and 12, 13 of the starters were from Ohio. And this year there's like 48, 50 Ohio guys, and only 4 or 5 starters on the entire team are from the state of Ohio. So it's quite a contrast, I think.
Well, and what a lot of those Ohio guys on that 2014 team would not have been there if Urban Meyer was there in 2011. He
Just a
wasn't gonna
guy.
he wasn't going to recruit Tyvis Powell, Pat Elfline, a
He's just
bunch
a
of guys.
guy.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been on that team. So I think you still got to that
Did
gives
not
some
like
of the
that guy.
credit, give some of that credit to Jim Tressel and Luke Fickell for already having those guys committed, and or give credit to Urban Meyer for honoring all of those commitments. Other coaches, like when Mark D'Antonio took over Cincinnati and Michigan State, basically said nobody is committed. And Urban Meyer, when he got there, said, "Okay, you guys are all committed," and and there was guys that were never going to play.
Left.
Yeah.
He came in, and even though they were on bowl ban for that first year, none of the seniors left to go play somewhere else. So that kind of speaks to the culture, there at Ohio State, I suppose, and I still think it's there today. I'm not saying there's a negative culture at Ohio State at all. I'm just making observations. I mean, when you lose 3 straight games to your rival, and that doesn't shake you to your core and your sensibility, and you don't at least assess everything top to bottom, side to side, and figure out what's wrong here. I give Michigan full credit. Their offensive and defensive lines have outplayed Ohio State 3 years in a row. And not a secret. That's why they won 2 of those games by double digits. And, we're in large part, generally in control of the last one, from start to finish. So, Ohio State made a furious run there at the end to try and steal it, but, came up short again. So I think Ohio State's got some soul searching to do. And, they've got to work to get up to Michigan's level on the field is kind of how I look at it.
I also think when we talk about they need more Ohio guys, I need to know which Ohio guys and which out-of-state guys you're getting rid of.
Not just Ohio guys that are from, Brecksville or Loudonville or Ironton or,
because they've got a guy from Ironton who just hit the transfer portal. So they've got Ohio guys. I'm just scanning how many of the Ohio guys. Let's see. Yeah, I mean only two Ohio guys in the transfer portal from Ohio State. Jacob James, Jair Brown. Yeah, so the three. Jacob James, and then Jair Brown and Reed Carrico. So some of those Ohio guys are never going to play at Ohio State, and that's just the way it is.
You threw me a flashback there, Steve. I used to call some Loudonville games when I first worked out of college in Ashland at doing high school play-by-play. Pick up Loudonville. I can't even remember what their nickname was. That was so long ago.
Yeah. They had a great football program, no doubt.
They did. They actually did. Yes. Super chats. Although there's a zillion things that went through my mind during all that. You guys threw out a lot of great stuff. I just can't imagine that it would be hard pressed. We would be hard pressed to find a team that has entered its rivalry game 10-1, 11-0, 11-0, and lost that game. Maybe you could find a Florida State run in the 90s. I doubt it, where a team lost 3 consecutive games, having lost 1 game in a span of 3 years going into that game. And of course, maybe Bo against Woody.
95, 96, 97 was close. The 97 team lost to Penn State before the 97 Michigan game, but 95 and 96, Ohio State went in there. Yeah. When I was a sophomore and junior, in fact, went into that game undefeated, and bad things happened.
Yeah, that would be tough to find. In a comment I made to Steve, and I'm ripping this off from a viewer who made this comment, and I thought this was very it just hit me a certain way that I didn't think of it this way. Without Ohio State, Michigan is...
What's their signature win?
They've gained all their relevance. Yes.
3 years. What's their signature win?
They've gained all their relevance. They can thank Ohio State for their relevance because they've done nothing else. You look at Ohio State's run the last 20 years. Let's take Tressel on. Well, it's built on all sorts of wins all over the country. Postseason play and otherwise, big non-conference games, but
yeah, it's like people hold the 2006 Ohio State Michigan game up on some pedestal, 1-2. Whoop-de-freaking do. Michigan went off and lost USC, and Ohio State got stomped by Florida. Yeah, on that one day, it was the biggest thing in history of the Big Ten, but neither of them did anything with it. I want to see Michigan do something with this. You're so big and freaking bad. Go win the national championship and then come talk to me. Okay? You're so freaking big and bad. Go win the national championship and then come talk to me. Run all your crap here in the thing, whatever. You didn't win a game against Ohio State for 22 years, and now you're the biggest thing since sliced bread. Go win the national championship and then come talk to me.
I did like the reaction to the announcement that it was going to be Alabama and not Florida State. That was
I don't read into those things, but certainly a lot of people did. And
Boy,
it's easy
body
to
language was telling that day, wasn't it? There at that would have been in the ballroom in Indianapolis. I was going to say in the hallowed halls of Schembechler Hall, but no, that was in the Weston Ballroom there in downtown Indianapolis. They know what they got coming. They know what's coming. They know what's coming right for them. Why is all the money line money on Alabama, people? Why is that?
I do like the super chat from Yakov 22.
Yeah.
With Quinn Ewers at quarterback this year as planned, Ohio State wins the title. And I assume I said it here. I said it elsewhere. Once Quinn Ewers reclassified to 2021, that raised his chances of never playing at Ohio State almost to the ceiling. And had he not done that, had he not started his clock in 2021, you were going to see Kyle McCord versus Quinn Ewers this year as a competition, assuming they could keep him, Ohio State could keep him with NIL money. But once he got here in 2021, and you're not going to sit for 2 years and then compete for a job. And you can sit for 1 year and compete for a job the next year. You're not going to sit for 2 years and then compete to see if you can win a job in year 3. But it would have been interesting to see what they do with Quinn Ewers as a sophomore this year. But alas, one of the many what ifs in Ohio State lore.
David Greenshield, thank you so much for the contribution. Had Ryan Day been asked about using more quarterback run, especially in short yardage or goal line?
I don't know if the fact that they put the Devin Brown package in tells you that they want to do more of that. And if Devin Brown is the quarterback, is starting, whoever is playing, Devin Brown and Lincoln Kenols can both run it. Kenols rushed for about 3,000 yards in his high school career and threw for about 10,000. So he can do all of that. He can run for you. Devin Brown is as we know, the runner of the two between him and Kyle McCord. So I would expect to see more running of the quarterback in this game, also because they don't trust the throwing as much. So you might just be better off running.
Guys, I know we're up against it, but I wanted to hit you up with a general question on the transfer portal losses here, because Julian Fleming aside, that one hit me to a certain extent. I was a bit surprised by that. The rest of those guys, limited production, playing time, anything like that. But what you get at Ohio State that's fairly unique in those transfer portal losses, not completely unique. You can go places like Alabama and Georgia, look at their transfer portal losses. But a lot of those guys, Evan Pryor, probably at the top of the list, just high level recruits. A number of those other guys were top 75 to 100 players coming into the system and just never were able to make a move.
Yeah. And really, if you look at what Ohio State has lost, they lost a third-year quarterback, which has been the norm, and they lost a senior wide receiver, which isn't necessarily the norm. They basically got an extra year out of a guy than they normally expect to. And then everybody else, you've got Jair Brown in there, who had one start last year against Wisconsin as a true freshman. Cam Martinez has a couple of starts, but everybody saw what happened when he was on the field this year. So the guys that they have lost really haven't played, weren't going to play, and were battling uphill to make it on the field. So this is just roster. Some of this is being pushed out. Some of these guys are leaving to go play. Yeah, it's trimming the fat basically, and the number of guys, the changeover that you're going to start seeing in a lot of these schools. You're going to bring in 25 new guys every single year. You're probably you're losing your departed, your seniors and your NFL guys, and you're going to lose 8 to 15 transfers every year. So there's going to be times where you're bringing in 40 new players. That's almost half of your scholarship allotment each year. So this is going to be the new norm for a lot of schools, and it's going to be difficult to handle it. And the guys who handle it best will probably do the best, or whoever gets the best quarterback and the best offensive line and best defensive line will have the best chance there.
Mike Ford is telling us that Ohio State has zero culture. Every time I hear something like that, I think they must just be practically an NFL team in terms of talent if they have zero culture and they're taking the number one team in the country within 30 yards of a win on the road when their quarterback gives away one touchdown. I just think they must be just amazing. They must like zero culture, zero, none, no effort, nothing.
Yeah, it is to wonder how they made it that far, isn't it?
It's pretty incredible.
I don't know.
All right. Steve, appreciate you being here as always, making this work for us. That doesn't get lost. I know you got a ton going on. Tony, you as well. You got so much going on.
A lot less going on this week than we probably hoped. So there you go.
I gotcha. Join Tony's podcast, Buckeye Weekly, and of course, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Steve's at Bucknuts 247. They both have helped me out beyond what I can go into detail, just helping us build this weekly show here. So, guys, appreciate it. Kevin, hope you're resting up. We appreciate you as well. See you guys back here next week.